And now you're looking at all of the parts that belong to the slide. You've got of course, just the slide itself. I've left the dovetail front side on, so we're about to reassemble this, but I'm showing all the pieces here. We've got the Novak rear sight, the extractor, the retaining pin for the extractor, and the spring. You've got the firing pin retainer safety, both levers here. We've got the spring and buttons that go with the firing pin retainer. Each spring, each button. You've got, of course, the firing pin spring. We have then the firing pin safety. We've got the magazine disconnect, so the gun will not fire when there's no magazine inserted. That's what the plastic one is for. And then the corresponding springs that go with those parts, and the plate that holds the parts in before we install the rear sight. So to start reassembly, we've got to start with the top of the slide. Let me move these pieces out of the way. You've got to start with the top of the slide here before you can go any further. You're going to take the round firing pin safety, then this white plastic magazine disconnect goes in there. Then there's two springs. They are different size, so there's no way to reverse them. The small spring goes in the metal piece, the bigger spring goes on the plastic piece, and then this piece goes underneath the Novak. This piece holds down those pieces, keeps them flush and clean. And so I'm going to hold that down with my finger just like that. Get it to stay here. Push it down nice and flush. Got to make sure it's flush before you start to put the sight on. And then we'll take the sight, and we always want to start from the right side of the slide. Just get the sight started like that, and then you're not having to worry about that flying off. Once it's on there, it's on there. And we just take this and pound it back on using the non-marring side of the hammer. Doesn't take too long once you're good with the hammer. You can see there I'm almost all the way home. I just got to move it another 32nd of an inch or so. And right there, it is centered. I don't know if that shows up or not, but that's just about perfect if you look at it this way. And then I've got to remember to tighten down the screw there on the sight, which I'll go ahead and do now. I'm going to assume that it's adjusted perfect for windage here. Get that tight. So now, looking at the underneath of the slide, as you can tell, we've got the firing pin button right there, then the magazine disconnect. And then now we're going to take the firing pin and spring, which they go together like that, and then they fall down into the firing pin channel right here, which will only work if you depress the metal button. You've got to push that down with a punch, and then take your brass punch so you don't scratch anything, and then drive that firing pin all the way home, and then release that metal button that you can see by the black punch. When I release that black punch, and by the way, you can see the firing pin sticking through here, that lets you know you're all the way in. Then release the brass punch, and now that metal button there is holding the firing pin almost out of the way in order for us to install the safety lever here. And on the safety lever, what we have to do is, and this should be oiled up pretty good, by the way, before you try to install it. It will help. But first we've got to install the button that belongs in this hole right here. So we're going to take one of the springs, drop it in there, then take the button. Now there's two buttons here. You'll see one has a round tip and the other one has a more of a square tip. The one with a square tip is the button that will go into the end here to retain the other lever. So make sure you use the round one. The one with the round nub is the one that goes in this hole here. We'll drop that in. And now we're ready to slide this in. Alright, so now you can see firing pin there is still sticking out just a little bit. So now we're ready to install the firing pin retainer or safety lever here. I've put a little bit of oil in that hole for the spring just to help hold it in, if anything. So we'll take this lever and get it started by turning it up this way. We'll slide it in to where it touches the firing pin, which I know you can't see, but you can probably start to make it out through there. Depress that firing pin again with the brass punch just to get the safety lever past it, and then take the brass punch and push on the lever while we're trying to seat it, and then turn the lever to about that position, and then push the safety lever all the way up till where this button is almost touching the frame, which I guess you could see it there. And then use your brass punch to push on that lever to depress it. Again, you want to use your brass punch so you don't scratch anything. And just like that, it's in there. And then on this end, we're going to take this screw, this spring and button that's left over. Drop the spring in, drop the button in, like so, and then this lever is ready to slide on. And the way we do this is we got to take a smaller punch than what I've got out here. This one's a little bit too fat. Oh, no, this one will work. So I'll just take that and depress it, being very careful not to slip, because if I slip it'll go flying and we'll never find it. And then just push that lever over it and you'll hear a snap, and it lets you know it's locked on there, and you're good to go. So now all we got to do is put our extractor in. Oh, and first though, if you see the firing pin is still sticking out, the way you release that firing pin now and put it into its rest position is we hit this safety firing pin safety button again, and you'll hear it snap into place, just like that. And now we can see what we normally see on these third generation guns. You can see the firing pin right there ready to be struck by the hammer. And now on the extractor, all we have to do, on this gun I'm going to put a little oil in here, and we're ready to install the extractor here. I've put the spring in. The extractor is going to get installed that way, of course, but I'm going to first try to get the retaining pin started. I've got a pair of forceps here as a helper, and let's see if I can get this to work. Okay, and let me drive that in a little more. Now if I push it in any further, the extractor won't be able to get inserted, so let me get that spring in and get the extractor in there and kind of hold it in with my thumb as much as I can. It's tough, but and we should be able to drive it home now. And we can see it starts to slide in pretty quick once everything gets lined up. It's just a trick of getting it all lined up. Then we want to use a brass punch to finish driving it home. And a couple wraps with a steel punch just to get it below the surface. And it's recessed, so it's not in the way now of any of the action. So there it is. You can see the pin just starting to protrude above the area on the top. So that slide is finally put back together.